You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
She is sure, she is sure, she is strong, she is strong, she is true, she is true. She is brave, she is brave, she is bold, she is bold. She is you, she is you, she is you, she is you. She is sure, she is sure, she is strong, she is strong, she is true, she is true. She is brave, she is brave, she is bold, she is bold. She is you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Word of Mom Radio here on the Word of Mom Media Network. I'm your host, Dori DeCarlo, and you know we are here week after week, show after show, breaking those myths that mompreneurs and businesswomen, especially those of us building our businesses from home, that we're just dabbling in between bake sales and getting our nails done. We're not. We are smart, we are savvy, and we are sharing the wisdom of women in business and in life. And I'm looking forward to bringing today's guest into the author's alley. Australian, New Zealand award-winning children's author Laurel Colless is a literary comparatist by education, but spent 25 years working in sustainable business and journalism across Asia, the US, and Europe before coming back to writing. She is the founder of the Carbon Busters Club, a kids' climate science program that combines storytelling with science education. In 2013, Laurel became an Gore Climate Reality Leader. Through storytelling, her aim is to entertain children with page-turning thrillers while empowering them to take the lead on big world problems like climate change, extreme weather, and plastic pollution. And I can go into more and more, but I'd much rather bring Laurel in and share her journey. So with that being said, Laurel, welcome to Word of Mom Radio.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me and for that introduction. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
My pleasure. So I would love for you to take us on your journey, going through the sustainable business practices and journalism and everything else that led you to now becoming an author.
So 25 years, yes, working in business on 4 continents and working in the grown-up world. I reached a sort of point of crisis or a point of inflection about 10 years ago where I have to say I was working in Washington, D.C., and I was working on quite a big project at Virginia Tech. And I was working with the grown-ups, and I was getting more and more frustrated with the speed at which things were happening. And of course, I understand for adults working in business, we have short-term financial concerns always to consider. And I think we very often sacrifice long-term environmental goals that make good business sense just for the short term. So I was working on a project which was urgent, addressing energy efficiency in buildings around climate change with climate technologies from Virginia Tech. And I was reaching a point where people were reneging on promises, dragging their feet, not taking action. And I started to think, we don't have time for this. Maybe I should be looking more to the younger upcoming generation. I'd already had sort of a grounding in literature, and I had just started getting going. So with storytelling, and I started to think I was going to jump into something different, but it was actually, I don't think I would have made this jump if I hadn't had this kind of slightly woo-woo experience. It's something that's never happened to me before and hasn't happened since. And I wonder if I can tell about that.
By all means.
Yeah.
We love woo-woo
Because
experiences.
yeah, I do
That
too. I'm
aha
actually
moment's a great thing.
but it was in Washington, D.C. It was already 10 years ago. So my husband then he's retired now, but he was foreign ambassador in Washington, representing Finland. And had a full-time job. We had 2 kids. We had a lot of entertainment. It was during Obama's first term. So going back a little while now. So I was exhausted and I called in a massage, which was I decided to treat myself and get a massage. And the woman actually came to the house. Her name was Heather, and she opened up her the massage table, and I was so happy to crawl onto it. And she said to me, now, before I start, we're just doing a regular deep tissue massage. But before I start, I just want to tell you that every now and then, when I'm massaging people, stuff comes up. And she said, I'm not a psychic and I'm not trying to present myself as a psychic, but if I get anything, should I tell you? I'm like, are you kidding me? Of course, please tell me if you get something. She said, sometimes it's just psychic information or things that maybe you might want to know. So we were halfway through the massage, and I remember this so vividly because she was massaging the back of my leg on my calf muscles. And she said, okay, I'm getting something, and it's quite big. I mean, at first I thought she was talking about my legs, but she said, I'm getting something that you're writing something. And I said, oh, yeah, but not seriously. She said, for children, right? And I said, yeah, but it's not, I have a day job and I've got so much going on. She said, you have to do this. She said, I'm getting that you really have to do this, and it's going to change your life. It's going to be a really big thing. It's going to be really successful. This is a woman I've never met. I met her like 35 minutes earlier. And so by now I'm sitting up and putting on my robe, and I'm saying, but I haven't told anyone about those stories. Had not my husband, not my children, none of my friends, which meant that, I couldn't just pass it off as, oh, you've got this from somewhere. And so she said, yeah, she had tears in her eyes. And she said, I can see, she said, everyone's telling you to do it. And I said, who's everyone? She said, your guides, they're all in the room here. She said, I can see an angel on top of your head. I mean, I don't know. I'll never know. But, she said, you have to do this. And so, of course, I didn't start on it right away, but I did eventually. We moved from Washington, and I started concentrating on kids and on eco-science. And the storytelling I found was always the best way to get kids interested, to get them curious. We were talking about this earlier, Dori. Kids need to be interested if they're going to learn, not bored. So the storytelling was sort of the way to start talking about this stuff. And the novels. So I'm now on my 4th novel. They're selling all around the world, and I'm writing my 5th. Actually, I've just launched my 4th, which is what I'd love to do a shout out about today, maybe later. But yeah, I think there's been times over the last 10 years where I've been failing, or I just haven't been selling books, or it's just been too hard. And I've said, I think I would have definitely quit if it hadn't been for this one kind of mystical experience, which my mind goes back to all the time, that somehow I couldn't see anyone. I don't know, she might have just been messing with me. But anyway, here I am 10 years later, and I'm doing it.
I think that's awesome. And good for you that you took that aha moment and really went for it. With your books, you have that mission of raising awareness about the climate crisis and pollution and things like that. And you decided to do it through fantasy fiction. So how have you balanced those 2 elements, the fantasy with the facts?
Yeah, that's a really fair question, because I am doing fantasy fiction. Well, when I say the official genre is called realistic science fantasy fiction, but that's a mouthful. But basically, I had to figure out, because climate change, extreme weather, plastic pollution, these are real urgent problems, right? So it's not the world of fantasy we're talking about. So how do you depict these in a novel for children in a way that speaks truth, but is also accessible to them? And I decided the only way really to do that was to approach it through the imagination. So for 9 to 12-year-olds, I mean, this is scary stuff. Deforestation. I remember my kids crying themselves to sleep when they heard at school about the Amazon rainforest, areas the size of 20 football fields being felled in half an hour, and different things, extreme weather, floods, wildfires, people losing their homes. This is real stuff, and it's quite scary for kids. So what I decided was, I knew that, and I had some time to think about it. I was working with these science education clubs that I started in Greece, and I knew climate change would have to be the villain, but how do I make it a villain in a way that's compelling and fair? And there are many ways that we can tell the truth to children, and I think that fantasy is just sort of another way of approaching the truth about how we treat each other, how we treat the world. I did Salman Rushdie, the famous author. Some of your audience probably are aware of him. I did his masterclass because I needed to get back to sort of learning how to write again. And I still remember vividly one of the things he said when he was talking about what kind of story are you going to tell and how is the best way to tell it. I mean, just because I'm modeling now the stories. So in my books, I want my children in the books, the characters, I want them to feel like they're in a world that's a lot like our world. But I've got this fantastical overlay, which is representative of climate change and extreme weather. What I had to do was create a monster. So I've created a monster, sort of demon class, warrior class, a pantheon of monsters. I was living in Greece. I called them anthrogs. I took the word anthropos, which comes from the generic Greek word for humankind, and I put it together with hog as no offense to pigs, but as a sort of symbol of overconsumption and greediness and the way we use and take more than we need. So these anthrogs were born, and I got this kind of verification from Salman Rushdie when he said, sometimes the truth doesn't have to sort of come dressed up as facts. It can come even on a flying carpet. And he said, if you're writing a little book about a boy with a lamp, sometimes you need a flying carpet. So I was writing a book about kids in an eco school. They come from everywhere. It's the top secret school for the most eco-demic kids of the world. So it's this secret away school. And I wanted these kids to have to face up to these monsters. I wanted monsters that were smart, that would, they'd have to fight them, and they'd have to find ways to come up against them. So these monsters are kind of like my flying carpet, if that makes sense. I've kind of skirted around your question a bit, but basically I created a monster which is birthed out of garbage dumps or birthed out of landfill. The current book that I've just launched, it's actually a Leviathan style monster that grew up in the bottom of the sea and was birthed from microplastics. So that's a blind monster that comes from the dark depths of the sea, and the kids face up to it in very interesting and compelling ways. So yeah, fantasy fiction, but when people say, oh, so you're world building, I say I'm not world building. When I build the world of my stories, all I have to do is look out the window or read the newspaper or read the IPCC report on climate, and I've got my world, but I've got this fictional overlay, fantastical overlay that helps bring it all to life and maybe helps ignite the imagination of the readers.
On that note, think of what Laurel just said. We're going to take a quick break, say thank you to our sponsors, and we'll be back here in just a moment on Word of Mom Radio.
She is brave, she is bold, she is you, and we want to tell your story. Are you ready to share your journey with us on Word of Mom Radio? Go to wordofmomradio.com and register as a guest. We want to tell your story because when you win, we all win.
In 2017, Unsilenced Voices was formed to help survivors of domestic abuse and gender-based violence worldwide. The organization currently serves Sierra Leone, Rwanda, Ghana, and the USA. In 2022, Unsilenced Voices gifted over $33,000 to survivors in the USA, and in Sierra Leone, there are over 26 young girls who have been rescued from sex trafficking and domestic abuse and now going through vocational training school in order to better their lives. We need your help. Donations are critical in order for us to continue our work. We also need volunteers to help with research and development. Please visit unsilencedvoices.org for more information.
And we're back here on Word of Mom Radio. We are talking with Laurel Colless about her book, Nights Unite, and eco-anxiety that so many of us are feeling now, and the environmental issues, climate change, biodiversity loss, all of these different things that are such a growing concern, especially among our youth, because they're the ones who are truly going to suffer the most from it. You have found this way to weave this all into this book. And again, looking at the reality and the fantasy, let's talk a little bit about this and what kids are facing and what you see them doing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is quite a sobering subject because eco-anxiety, it's real and it's all around us. And it's something that many kids are feeling deeply. And I know in the US, I'm not living in the US now, but I have lived there. And there's lots of, there are a lot of data points that are quite disturbing about how many kids really are suffering. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but one of the things that I've sort of learned from researching and talking to children is that the sadness comes from the disconnect or the gap that children often feel between the kind of things they might learn at school or they might learn from watching television or reading books about the climate crisis, for example, or about the dire state of the oceans. You know, by 2050, we may have more plastic than fish in the Atlantic Ocean if we carry on the way we're going. So they hear these things and they read these things, and then they go home and they see, you know, what the adults are doing or not doing about it. I think I'm oversimplifying it, of course, but they feel a sense of powerlessness if they see that the leaders, their parents, even, you know, adults in their communities, in their churches or in their after school clubs, if they see that those grown-ups are not taking action, they feel a really overwhelming sense of powerlessness in some cases. So I guess I want to, with my stories and also talking to you now, remind the mums out there that there's lots of ways that we can help with channeling these feelings of despair into action and hope. And they can be done really simply. If it depends where in terms of your listeners, where they have their own agency. There are mums who, for example, have after school programs with kids, or maybe teaching at Scouts or doing something with the church, or where you're maybe coaching a sports team. You can find different ways to put a sort of eco overlay onto your events, make a zero net emissions game, or just everyone carpools or ride your bikes, or find a way to get a solar light on the side of the field. Do something just fun and a bit innovative so that kids start to get inspired and feel like they're part of the solution, or have a clothing swap, find ways to go circular with things, you know, with items that you're buying or selling, or recycling, you know, just do it together with the kids and make them feel empowered. These small things can actually make a huge difference. And then on a more sort of high level, I don't know if you've noticed, Dori, but there's been quite a few lawsuits in the last 5-6 years, particularly with the US taking the lead. I mean, I love this. You have these kids who are taking the lead. The most famous one that I've read a bit about, that you probably know something about too, was called Juliana versus the US. And that was children-led, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, trying to hold leaders accountable for decisions that they're making around fossil fuel investment, for example. There was one in Montana, which was finally resolved in December 2024, where actually the Supreme Court in Montana upheld on behalf of the children. These are children like 9 to 18 in class actions, you know, accusing governments of investing in fossil fuels without taking into account their right to a clean and healthful environment in the future. There was another one in Hawaii. There are a lot in Australia, some really high profile ones in Australia too, where kids are taking corporations to court looking at their sustainability reports and holding them accountable for promises, mostly around pollution and fossil fuels. But this kind of thing can be really empowering. And I have tried to weave it into my tales. The last book that has just come out in December last year has one of my characters. She's quite timid and she's suffering from the eco sadness. And in a very unusual and kind of, well, I think surprising way, she takes on one of the monsters and she has a big impact on the outcome of the story. And at the end, she's feeling much better. And she says, helping helped. So the fact that she could be part of the solution and stand up and take action really helped deal with this sense of disempowerment that I was talking about earlier.
It's kind of remarkable to me because kids are so aware. And you were saying about watching adults, and you mentioned church, and I will never forget being at a church luncheon. We cook for a homeless shelter. And
Yes.
Then here we are having this lunch. And I went in, I was helping clean up, and they got ready to scrape all the food into the garbage that was left over. And I just was like, excuse me, did we not just cook for the homeless? We had all of these containers. I packaged up every bit of the food.
Good on you.
6, families of 4, families of 2, and people who are single to be able to take home. I just looked and I'm thinking to myself, I can't even think of how many times we have luncheons and you guys just throw this food away. It's to me so hypocritical to be talking about one thing and then in the same breath throwing stuff away. Oh my gosh. And our kids do see this.
Yeah, they do. But maybe these, your colleagues or the people at the church, they just weren't thinking. They were just they'd already, done their bit. But yeah, kids can really hold us accountable too, can't they?
You know what? I'm serious. And it's important. My grandson always joked with me, Mimi, it takes you a whole month to have a bag of garbage. And I said, yeah, it does. Because I compost this and this goes in the recycling. This is this and that's that. And so it would take me a whole month to just have one bag of garbage to finally throw away. And I'm throwing away a half a bag of garbage because no food is in it. Nothing's going to smell. But we do. Kids learn by what they see. And we were talking about children's literacy and the importance of reading. And again, things that you are addressing with your book, because kids learn by what they see. So it's got
right. And in fact, literacy is a kind of foundational theme for me. I mean, obviously, I'm writing books and, my own children, they started moving away from books, spending so much time on their phones, and it's really disturbing. And actually, before I came on today, I had a quick look at some statistics from last year in the US on kids reading. And it's quite sobering, I have to say. This is the study from your National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is kind of like what you call in the US the nation's report card.
Mm-hmm.
And the number that jumped out at me is 40% of fourth graders are now scoring below basic reading proficiency. Fourth graders. How old is a fourth grader? It's someone should be right.
Probably 10.
Yeah, my target audience.
Yeah.
I'm targeting 9 to 12-year-olds. Partly because the 9 to 12-year-olds, they still love the storytelling and they still feel the magic of nature. But anyway, 40%. So then another troubling number was this 39% of 9-year-olds and only 17% of 13-year-olds say that they read for enjoyment or they read almost every day. So that and it's the boys that are falling away faster as well. And that's so sad because, well, I mean, I don't want to start preaching, but we were talking earlier that something really special happens when a child opens a book.
Yeah.
Compared with looking at streaming. I think that streaming still can be great, for the imagination and some great stories out there. And, I'm not dissing that. I'm just saying when you open a book, the brain has to work, as we all know this, where the brain has to work much harder. The child has to really go in deeper. Mm-hmm. The brain has to create the characters, visualize them, imagine their voices. It's so much better for developing your creativity and your imagination to be reading a book. And also when you read a book for children, I think it's so important, at least for me, when I was 11, I can still remember closing the door and getting into my bed and with my jammies and opening a book and had this feeling of being somewhere else. being inside someone else's mind or being inside other characters' minds. And it was very important when I found a character that was like me. That was a really important thing. And I try to do this in my books. I have, a lot of diversity, kids from everywhere. They all look different. It's like an international school meets a secret academy kind of thing. I also think it's very important when a child comes across characters who think very differently. That's so much. It's so important for expanding our minds and for developing critical thinking and getting access to other ways of thinking, other opinions, and also just having a load of fun, getting out of yourself and out of your bedroom and getting somewhere else, and having fun and going on an adventure. And that's so good for the brain, and it's so good for just developing and growing as a human being, in my opinion. So for all the mums out there, our mission has to be to get our kids reading more. It's not easy, though, I don't think, because we're competing with so many other devices. I don't know if you've heard of any tips. I've heard of mothers paying their children to read a novel.
It's funny. My daughter, like her mommy, was an avid reader. My sons, well, not so much. So you know what? I got magazines that I knew they'd love to read. Sports. I didn't care what they were reading as long as they were reading. And then my oldest read this book, I want to say White Fang, but I could be wrong. And it was something he had to read for school. And I went to say goodnight to him and he was still reading. And I said, Dan, it's time to go to sleep. He goes, Mom, I can't put this book down. I have 20 pages. I have to finish reading this. He said, now I understand how you get lost in a book. Oh my gosh. I walked out like on fairy wings.
I'm getting tingles.
I was so excited that he finally understood. And then I bought them Kindles. My daughter wanted the books, but I got them for my sons. My middle son still has the same Kindle. I said, don't you want a new one? He goes, works great. He goes, but I get to have a book with me anywhere I go.
Oh, well done you.
You know what? Well done them, though. I mean, I tried to model, but you can't force. Ultimately,
no, but you help them develop the habit.
Yeah.
And that's a lifetime habit.
It is a lifetime habit. And it's so funny because my daughter's a world traveler and would have her case of books that she would pack as she traveled. And last year she said, Mom, I broke down. I had to get an electronic. She said, I have my books. I ship them home because when I'm home, I want to read a book. And I'm like, good for you. It's about time that you did that. That's why I ask my guests, because I'm always going to read your book. How am I going to talk to you about your book if I haven't read your book? But I ask people to send me a PDF or an ebook or whatever, because I might read 8 books a month, depending on.
Okay, well, I'd love you to read my book. The target, you'd have to revert to your 11-year-old self.
Yeah, no, you know what? Hey, it was a good book. It was a good book. It's a good story, and it's something that I find really important. And so you have this whole Peter Blue series. As we're wrapping up, let people know where they can reach out to you to get them. We will have links to them on Word of Mom Radio. And what do you want to leave our listeners with, Laurel?
Well, okay, I really would love you to go to my website. I think that's the easiest way. Or the books are certainly available anywhere you get your online books. So obviously the Amazon platform, Barnes & Noble, but pretty much anywhere. And what I was saying to Dori earlier is I feel a little bit of an imposter when I'm writing about overconsumption, and then I'm saying buy my books. So if you're interested in what I've got to say, and you are interested in going to either a bookstore and getting them to order them, or a library, so that you can jump into the circular economy and have the books shared, I would love that too. Especially if your kids could go to their elementary school library and have the librarian order a copy so that more than one child could read in one sitting. Or if you do buy it, I'd be thrilled if you passed it on to someone. So we keep overconsumption in mind, and just basically I can practice what I'm preaching. But thank you in advance. I would love people to pick up the book and jump into the stories. And I'd love also to hear what your child thought about them with Amazon reviews, or any Goodreads reviews would also be, even just 2 or 3 lines. And even if you didn't like it, I think it's still a data point. I was reading somewhere yesterday that rejection is not a verdict, it's a data point. Don't you love that?
Yes, I do. I do. And you
So
know what,
even if you
Laurel,
didn't
let
like
everybody
it.
know what your website is.
So the website is my name, which is Laurel Colless, LaurelColless.com. It's laurelcolles.com. Or if you want to ping me on LinkedIn or on Instagram or Facebook, I'd love to have a conversation as well. And we can get those links maybe into the chat notes as well.
Absolutely. All of them will be on wordofmomradio.com. I encourage you, get the book. It's a great book to share with your kids. And it really does make a great combination of fantasy fiction addressing very serious, real crisis and elements going on in our world that we have to take responsibility for. As the adults, I was a little kid, Robert Kennedy, back in 1965, was talking about if we didn't stop polluting our air and our water, our grandchildren were going to suffer the consequences. And he was right. It's going to be our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren who are going to fight what these past generations have done. Give them the ability and encourage them. It's their world, and they have the right to a good, clean world. So, Laurel, thank you for sharing your journey with us. Thank you for sharing your book. And again, all of her links are going to be live. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us today on Word of Mom Radio.
Thank you, Dori. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure. And for all of you tuning in, thanks so much for being here. We're going to close out with our fabulous theme song from Smith Sisters and the Sunday Drivers. So till next time, this is Dori DeCarlo saying, go out and create a marvelous you. Bye for now.
She is sure. She is sure. She is strong. She is strong. She is true. She is true. She is brave. She is brave. She is bold. She is bold. She is you. She is you. She is you. She is you. She is sure. She is sure. She is strong. She is strong. She is true. She is true. She is brave. She is brave. She is bold. She is bold. She is you. She is you. She is you. She is you. Sure of herself, yeah, she takes care of biz. Powerful and strong, yeah, she knows who she is. Has integrity, woman strong and true. You know her by name, see this woman is you. She is sure. She is sure. She is strong. She is strong. She is true. She is true. She is brave. She is brave. She is bold. She is bold. She is you. She is you. She is you. She is you. She is sure. She is sure. She is strong. She is strong. She is true. She is true. She is brave. She is brave. She is bold. She is bold. She is you. She is you. She is you. She is you. Adds value and hope. Has proved to be brave. See, it's never too late. Never time to behave. Reaching for dreams. Doesn't matter the age. Believes in herself. Unleashed from her cage. She is sure.